Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort, meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday. It is a very special Saturday in the Northland. It is Grandma's Marathon Saturday, hence the late start for us, but more than happy to move out of the way for one of the Duluth's biggest events. And Dave Cook, I think we have to start there and simply say congratulations to a lot of people today, whether you're putting on this race, whether you're cheering on the racers, or of course participating. Something society loves to say these days, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Everybody wins today.
Everybody does win today. I think this is one of those days that Duluth shows up, and so many people, get out of town, which is legit as well. But so many people are on the race course, making sure that the runners know that they're appreciated, not just the stands, the water stands and whatnot, but all the just cowbells and applause and whatnot. And yeah, and a hat tip also to Tom Hansen and Alicia for doing their bit. We were talking about that before we went on live because you've done it in the past.
I have done it, and it is not easy. Now, I know the analysts who have run before, it's probably easy to them because it's wheelhouse material, and they know the terminologies with the tailwinds, the mile markers, the paces, all that good stuff. If you're not a runner, and I don't mean to speak for Tom or Alicia because I know that Tom Hansen has indeed run Grandma's, and Alicia Tipke does a lot for fitness as well. But if you're not a competitive runner like those analysts are, it's a different conversation. And there's some ad lib that isn't easy. And Alicia Tipke, Tom Hansen, Bailey Warfield, everybody with the coverage that you just heard before us here at the Northland Sports Page, like Dave said, tip of the cap to all of you. That's not easy. You made it look that way.
They sure did. I mean, it's fun to, and the fact that we know them and we can see, their processing and stuff. And no, they did a great job. And as you said, congratulations to all the runners. And yeah, let's have a show.
Absolutely. So we will dabble in some race discussion here and there on the show because, of course, it is the big event in Duluth, but we will dabble everywhere else in the world of sports as well because it's been a big week in a lot of different facets. It's been an up and down week, but that's every week of the season if you're the Minnesota Twins. We will talk a lot about them today. Lavelle E. Neal will join us at about 5 after 11. Of course, we'll have Dave Hoops because we have Dave Hoops every week because he's one of our illustrious sponsors. We've got quite a list. It's a bit of a marathon to give them all the love they deserve.
Absolutely. Let's just start there. Hoops Brewing is the spot today. If you're downtown and celebrating the marathon, head on over to Hoops and take a sample of their wares. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. The Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater right downtown, Tavern on the Hill, their locations in Proctor and in Two Harbors, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, Assisted Living Locators, free to use, helping your loved one locate assisted living, memory care, and independent living. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. And, of course, the OG, Brian, Arola Architecture Studio.
Absolutely. So much gratitude for each and every one of those sponsors. They give us the opportunity to do this for 2 hours each and every Saturday, and I want to stress that. Yes, we started late, but we will go for 2 hours, so we will wrap up just in front of 12:30 today. Normally we're 10 to noon, but, again, we'll step out of the way for Grandma's Marathon to go a little bit longer than usual. But speaking of longer than usual, folks are staying around town longer than usual. Hopefully all those businesses you just talked about, they rake it in this weekend.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So if you're just hearing us for the first time, our sponsors are some of the best in town. Like, we just start with the Blackwoods Group. If you're running, you ran past two of them, right? You ran past London Road, you ran past
And if you finish,
Blackwater.
Get to Hoops as fast as you can.
Right, 100%. Hoops has got, variety, an ever-changing variety of beer and different ways to serve it. They got the screw off now. That is something that's unique.
That sounded angry. It's more of a twist off, but
yeah,
people have told me to screw off on Saturday mornings before. Go ahead.
Right, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
I mean, it's creative, it's really comfortable, and it's not just it's not a bar. Right. It's a place to get together.
It's a brewery and it's a gathering place, honestly.
Yeah. And so go on over there and have fun. And if you're going home or you're going to the hotel later and you need a spot to stop, make sure you're heading on up to Mount Royal. they have a gigantic inventory, right? I know that. So Jenny's coming next week, right?
Right.
And that's my sister in Alaska, and we are heading over there for the wine selection because she's a wine connoisseur, and the one place I know she can go and look at practically every wine you could ask for is right there at Mount Royal.
Absolutely, and I want to hat tip their staff as well because they do have quite a selection, and sometimes when you're in there, it can be intimidating as to even where to start. I'd start by asking for help. They'll give it to you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And the funny thing is, so Aaron and his roommate and, that group that they hang out with, that's where they go. And they go there for the same reason. They go there because, we want some beer, but, we want to try something different.
Right.
Well, they go there because there's always something different to try. The stock is huge.
Speaking of something different to try, I love that you said if you're hearing us for the first time because you and I don't think, do this show for ratings' sake.
No.
And if you looked at the ratings, you might say, good thing you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am always curious this particular weekend about ratings a little bit because it's a busy weekend. Duluth's busiest, easily Grandma's Marathon. So you wonder how many people are tuned to their radios right now. Are they doing 8 million different things? Is this one of our least listened to shows? Or how many people have the radio on listening to marathon coverage or have the radio on where they're running or have their radio on where they're just making their way around town? And there's a lot more people in town. Is this our most listened to show? That's a curiosity for me.
It is. And how many people are, listening just because they are coming up or they're, hanging out for the first time. And, our sponsors are the real deal. And so I hope you enjoy the show. And, if you've got time, take care of our sponsors.
Absolutely. That's very well said. We hope you enjoy the show because if you do, hopefully you can join us for the long run. And that's a pun I made today on purpose with Marathon Saturday. And it's a pun we're going to make as part of our opening topic today, too, because a marathon, 26.2 miles, is obviously a long run. The half marathon at 13.1 is a plenty long run. I will argue that the Irvin 5K last night at 3.1 is a plenty long run. But sports often reference the long run as well. And we're going to tackle that with the four majors, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, with the Minnesota men's teams. Who is the most built, all the way down to the least built, to compete in the long run? And I think we have to put the Minnesota caveat on this because it doesn't mean win a championship. Because if it did, we'd only have one team still standing on the men's side. It would be the Minnesota Twins, thanks to 30 plus years ago. Yeah. But I think it's who's built to compete in the long run because some rosters are, and some rosters have a way to go to get there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of the rosters are at that point where they should be winning now. Right, because they're expensive and who knows what they're going to look like in a year or two. And some are waiting for money to disappear off their cap, and they're trying to build a team that when they have some money, they can blow the doors off. So, they're all in different spots.
Right. So we will take the Wolves, the Wild, the Vikings, and the Twins and talk about how they are or are not built to compete in the long run given their current state of affairs. I think the way we should do this, Dave, is just have you name the team, we'll talk about them, and say where we ranked them among the four.
Okay, let's start with the NFL. No, the Vikings. Sorry.
Okay. You're preparing for buy or sell later.
Right, I always do this.
All right, so the Vikings, in terms of who's built to compete in the long run among the four, I ranked them second.
Oh, really?
Which goes against what I said last week during buy or sell, but last week, remember, I said with the excitement around the Wolves, with the excitement around the Twins, with the excitement around the Vikings, are the Wild seemingly the furthest off? That was a buy or sell. And you said sell and you pinned it on the Twins. And I said sell and I pinned it on the Vikings, but it was because I took the championship angle and said, well, you have so many things you don't know about. How can you say that team is going to be competitively exciting? Well, I'm going to sound like I'm completely contradicting myself because I'm going to assume the roster moves that they made to mold themselves to compete later on will pan out. Maybe not to J.J. McCarthy's Patrick Mahomes level, but I'm going to say that the youth movement that they're making or attempting to make is going to benefit them. Assuming it does, they are more built to compete in the long run because aside from Harrison Smith, to me, they don't have a lot of guys that are nearing their swan song at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they have anybody. But here's the thing. They are so dependent on one guy because their talent on defense just isn't that great. And if Flores leaves, now you've got to rebuild the defense, right? And I don't think he's going to leave, right? I think that he'll be here probably another year, doing some witchcraft on the defense to help guys that are, not at that level become that level. But if he goes and we bring in, another defensive coordinator that coaches a different way. The defense just doesn't have enough talent on it still.
Well, here's the thing. I don't disagree with what you just said, but I think it's the unknown that I'm choosing to take the positive angle on, because I think you're right. I think if the topic was who's set to compete now, the Vikings are down the list, which again is kind of what I said during buy or sell last week. Third or fourth, honestly.
Yeah.
But if we're going to take the long run, I don't know that you can say that the defense doesn't have enough talent, because you're assuming that Dallas Turner is going to be all that in a bag of chips. Let me,
nice.
Get my 90s reference out of the way early today. And you're assuming that Grenard is going to be
gnarly,
Danielle Hunter reincarnate. You're assuming that the Blake Cashman one of us angle is going to succeed for you.
He'll be tubular.
So you're assuming, now you've turned into Michelangelo from the Ninja Turtles, but I digress. But you're assuming that this youth movement on defense pans out. And if it does, roster-wise, they are assuming that they're going to be able to compete. I understand the question mark angle. I understand that they may not be talented in 2024. I understand it. But if we are looking long run, I give the Vikings defense a tip of the cap. Same way that I have to look at the offense and say, okay, you've got Jefferson locked down for a while. You're assuming TJ Hawkinson, maybe not this year right away, but in a year or two, has the injury recovery and he's okay. Darrison O'Neal continue to be good. Maybe the interior improves. That's a big question to me too.
Yep.
But J.J. McCarthy even becomes serviceable.
He's got the right coach. That's the thing. And McCarthy's lucky, right?
So the team is put together full of question marks right now, but the team is put together in a way that they're probably saying, without saying, 2025 and 26 should be really good. 2024, we don't know. So I guess when I put the Vikings at number 2, I took that angle.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Like, I agree with you. And Kwesi showed that he does know how to draft this year. Like, he did a masterful job of moving around. But I'm going third with them. I just am.
Who's your next team? I think we've covered them fairly well. Do you have more you want to say about the purple?
No, I think that's kind of it. I don't know if we should rank them down a level because of the new uniforms or up. No, seriously though, I think that they are in a spot where if Kwesi continues to draft well, their coach is the right coach, and then if you pull in a few free agents, you got a real shot.
Well, and again, I'm doing something that no Minnesota sports fan does. I'm assuming positivity.
Right?
Are they built to compete in the long run? Yes, in terms of age of roster. Productivity out of said roster, not so certain.
Well, let's go with the other team that's either not playing or hasn't played recently, and let's go with the Wild.
Okay, I put them third, and I struggled between either putting them third or fourth, because realistically, in my mind, they should be fourth, because they are going to have, and this is a technical term, they're going to have a buttload of money in a year or two. We have no idea what they're going to do with it. And the track record of Bill Guerin is okay. It's okay in the sense that he's made some shrewd moves. It's okay in the sense that he's made some baffling moves with the extensions of older guys. So in Bill, you trust or don't you? So they're going to have the flexibility to do plenty. But I don't know what they're going to do with it. So really, I think I should have put them fourth, because if you look at the roster right now, they're not built to compete at all to me, except for the fact that you do have Kaprizov, you do have Boldy, Rossi or Rossi. The hardest thing to figure out was how he wanted his name pronounced, but he figured something out last season. And then you've got Faber. So you do have a young core that is not completely to be pushed aside. But the rest of the roster, you're going, how much of an overhaul is this going to get in a year or two? So I almost gave the Wild like a 3.5, and I stuck them at third to be nice.
Yeah, no, and my initial thought was second. And I'm doing what you did with the Vikings.
Assuming positivity.
Right, because when they're out from the yoke, like,
the yoke's on everybody else at that point?
Right, but Ogren, Kuznetsov, did I get that right?
I'm going to go with yes, because I don't feel like correcting you today.
The hate kid that's coming up, you don't
like him?
You've got talent, right?
Right.
And the Chisholm kid looked pretty good when he was playing, and you're going to have a top 15 draft this year, and then in 2 years, cap limits off. You're going to have $15 million to spend, and some of that's going to go to Kaprizov. And but if you can bring in a scorer, now all of a sudden you've got two lines that can put the puck away, and he's still defensive minded. And so I think that I'm going to go with them second because of that. That's the power of positive thinking right there. And who knows where they'll be playing? It's not going to be the X by then, right? Might be the spam.
We don't know what it'll be named.
Can.
As long as it stays looking like a palace, you can call it whatever you want.
Right.
Just call it the home of the Minnesota Wild, and maybe a little bit more successful Minnesota Wild rather than the annual one and done, or in this case less this past season. But Again, it's the Northland Sports Page. If you're just joining us following the marathon coverage, we are halfway through our opening marathon segment because to do a marathon, you got to be ready to do some things for a long run in the literal and figurative sense. So we are adjusting or discussing or both the rosters of the big four Minnesota men's sports teams, Twins, Vikings, Wild, Wolves, and kind of giving our take on who ranks where in terms of are they built to compete in the long run. And again, we put the Minnesota caveat, compete, not win a title, because again, that just doesn't happen here unless you're Cheryl Reeve and company. So we're halfway through. We've tackled 2. We've got 2 to go. Where would you like to go next?
We're going to go with the Wolves.
Okay.
And
I put them at number 1 with a bullet.
I'm going to start this conversation by reminding people that 3 years ago, I picked them as number 1.
As the closest to winning a championship.
Yes.
Yeah. I put them at number 1 with a bullet, and this year obviously did a lot to get me there, but you were right last year at this time.
I am going to reverse course, and I'm putting them 4th, Brian.
Wow, why?
Because they are very expensive, and their key component, now the best player is young, but the 2 guys that came in and made them from a good team to a championship level team in Conley and Gobert are at the ends of their career.
Sort of.
Well, they don't have a center. They've got 2 power forwards, and Cat is going. I just don't know if Cat's going to be here in a year, right? And it doesn't seem that Finch likes to play kids with any kind of minutes at all, right? And so we don't know what we have with Miller or Minot. The kid from UCLA who tore his Achilles his last year of school, but was the Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year 2 years in a row. He's on the bench. They're gonna pick at the end of the draft this year,
right?
And they don't have any picks for a while. Like, they're not built long run. They're built now, but they're not built long run.
See, I think it depends on how long said long run is. If you're thinking 28, 29, 30 as your years, then I think you're right. If the long run is 25 and 26,
I think
you're okay.
I think their window ends in 25.
It depends, ironically, on something that we're all kind of sweeping under the rug because these folks don't play a minute. Depends on how the ownership structure ends up playing out.
100%.
Because you've got A-Rod, Bloomberg, and company that sound like a pretty attractive deal for bigger names to want to come here. Anthony Edwards, by the way, should be an attraction for bigger names to want to come here anyway. But there was that floating of if it goes to the A-Rod group, they may cut payroll. Glenn Taylor, you may have issues with him, but he never said that. The A-Rod group, I still think, oh, great, Seattle gets a team and it's ours, but they've never really said that either. But I just think between Anthony Edwards being attractive to other key names, if you have to deal Karl Anthony Towns, I think you could deal it for something significant. Maybe not as significant because, again, of the price. And I'm afraid that if you broadcast that you need to sell him, you're not going to get as much.
Yep.
But it might be almost as simple as out goes Cat, in goes Nas into that starting spot.
Yep.
Are they the same player? No. Is Nas young? Yes. He just looks like he's old. People got to remember that. Mike Conley, he is older, but he just signed to a 2-year extension. So you're going to hope you get 2 seasons out of that.
The key guy might be Tim Conley because he seems to be
because he's the mastermind of putting all this together.
Yeah, and
but
so
you got young studs. You've already got Ant. You saw the coming out of a young stud in Jaden during the playoffs.
Okay, but he needs to become consistent. Like, he's either really good or really
But how
defensive.
early are you in his career? He's not sitting there at 28, 29 years old, but older than Ant, so is my niece.
Yeah. He's pushing, I think he's 25. Like, I know that he's not in his prime yet, but let's not say he's 18, right? The other piece to this is they're old in places, Brian. And yes, and this smells a little bit like Garnett's prime, right? Where they kept trying to put other players around him because Ant
Okay,
is
for the
a drop.
record, Jaden McDaniels is 23.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
All right. Well,
I feel better.
Maybe he's younger than I thought he
I was like,
but
I
he's
thought he
older
was.
than you thought he was.
Well, he is older than Ant, but Ant is what? 21, 22?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, that's like the people that graduated in the class ahead of me. They're older than me, but let's not put them in a different universe.
So the thing is I think the 2 teams that are left, considering the Wolves were on and the Twins, they could be either first or fourth.
Right, because I was going to say it's super ironic to me that I put the Wolves at number 1 with the bullet because that nucleus should be there for a while, and I think suddenly the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be an attractive spot, and they've never been that.
Yeah.
But so that means that you put them at 4th, and it means that the team I put at 4th, you put at number 1, and that's the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, and I can just hear Pitt right now in my head. I'm doing that.
Yeah, this team doesn't want to compete because they're owned by a pole ad.
Right, Dave. At what point did the pole ads decide to spend some money? But they're set at short and at catcher. Their center fielder can play defense.
Are you set at catcher?
I think so. I think you can say
because
that.
you've got one that had a heck of a month and a half and is now struggling to hit 220, and you've got the other that is Tim Laudner without the power.
Right, the 220 guy though. This is year 3. You know he's coming back,
and you're paying a boatload for the guy who can't hit 190.
Yep. I think that you can. I think you know they're set at third.
Yes.
Right.
Health.
Right.
If we're assuming positivity, then let's throw health in the mix too.
Yeah.
Then you're absolutely set at third.
And then Brooks Lee looks like the real McCoy at second.
You hope.
Correct. But we all had hope on the other piece, right? Yep. And so you need corner outfielders and a first baseman, right? The 3 easiest positions to fill in baseball are the corner outfielders and first base.
Should be, but they've been a problem for this Twins team for too long for me to believe it's easy anymore.
And we've talked about their pitching, and I'm not always as positive about like Ryan and Ober as you are.
Right.
But if you go with your positivity, they've got an ace. They've got, and he's not pitched like one this year, but he's pitched one like, I mean,
I think this is, you like to use the phrase recency bias. I think that's part of why I plummeted the Twins to 4th, because that hurt me, because you know how much among the Minnesota teams I love the Twins the most.
But they've got the ace. They've got Joe Ryan, who's a very solid number 2. Ober can be a 3 if he can keep his body together, right? Then they have a mosh of pitchers. Simeon Wood Richardson, at this point, I'd have given you away last year. At this point last year, I'd have said just box of rocks, right? But the Festa kid then down at AAA, does Louis Varland figure it out? Like, there's a lot of internal guys right now. Now, the key to this is, as Pittwood's probably yelling at his radio right now, they got to spend a couple of bucks. Like, I showed you the trade thing from a couple weeks ago, where the Twins could trade a couple players and top-end players, not like junk, but top-end players to the Mets for Pete Alonso.
Yeah, that wasn't a couple weeks ago. That was Tuesday. It's been a long week.
Would the Pohlads pull something like that off? Because
it's a trade. You don't have to reach out and sign somebody.
But you're going to have to pay him.
Right.
The thing is
but he's a rental.
You put that on first base and in the middle of the lineup. That's a really good team.
See, now that's a different level of assuming positivity, because I didn't assume any transactions of marquee players coming here. A lot of what you said I agree with, but ironically, a lot of what you said is why I put them 4th. Because you're absolutely right about the pitching. You need Pablo to be Pablo again. He hasn't, and that kind of made me sour on the whole thing. Ryan's been very good. I still have a lot of hope for Bailey Ober. You just haven't seen it go to that next level. But Bailey Ober is what you thought Jaden McDaniels was for the Wolves. Bailey Ober in Major League Baseball seniority seems really young. He's not.
I know.
He's aging quickly.
Do you know why that is, though?
Because of the development loss with the COVID season and the innings limited and injuries and all that good stuff. Right. But so by the time he completely figures it out, and don't get me wrong, there may not be a Twin I hope more that does do exactly that. By the time he figures it out, he might be 31, 32 years old.
That's true.
And I'm just not so sure about that. But what you said beyond Simeon Woods Richardson, you said it with positivity, and I went, this is why I put him 4th. They have a mosh of pitchers that you go, well, maybe. In the pitching realm, they've never had a stud that you couldn't wait to see get here. In the offensive world, they always have. They may not have panned out, but it was wait for Buxton and Sano. Well, still waiting. Wait for Kirilloff and Lewis. We've gotten half of, oh my goodness, look at this. Kirilloff, you still hope can figure it out eventually. Yep. Now it's wait until you see Brooks Lee.
And Jenkins.
And people don't want to wait anymore. The second coming seems to always be there offensively. Whether or not it pans out, we get it, and we're assuming positivity.
Right.
Other than Festa, which really has only been a buzz topic for 2 to 3 weeks, there has not.
Well, he was the starter in the World game.
But there has not been a pitcher in the Twins system in a long time that you're like, wait until they give this kid a chance.
And you know who the last one was? Blazovic, who flamed out
entirely. And then going into the season, I would have put the Twins higher than I did in this very segment, because I would have said, absolutely, they have a nucleus that is built to be here forever, because I assumed Kirilloff was going to be a big part of it. I assumed Julian was going to be a big part of it. I didn't assume necessarily that Trevor Larnach would be a big part of it, but I assumed Matt Wallner would. Matt Wallner supposedly this week said, promote me or trade me. I'd take option B right now and see what you can get for him. But this young nucleus that we thought was going to carry them this season, they're not even with the team now.
That's true. But if we rank the ownership, this is where it gets squirrely.
Wow, if we rank the ownership, if we put the poll ads anywhere than 5th out of 4, people will turn the radio off.
That's the caveat to this. If we're not thinking positive, and we look at the ownership, the Twins are 4th because of the poll ads. The thing they did with the money from Bally's when they said they were going to lose 55, well, they got 30 of it back, and they didn't spend any of that. Like, that's dirty pool.
Absolutely. The difficult part has been watching the Twins lose 3 straight one-run games. They play this afternoon in Oakland. Tell you what, though, if you look at the whole week, which on the Northland Sports page we tend to because we're a weekly show, there maybe hasn't been one more indicative of the way this Twins season has gone. They won their first 3 in exciting fashion. They lost their next 3 in heartbreaking fashion. So it goes with the Minnesota Twins.
Right.
We're going to be going until about 12:30 today, again with the late start here on the Northland Sports page. Thanks to Grandma's Marathon. Congratulations to everybody affiliated with the race, especially those who participated. That's a physical grind. Olivia Newton-John getting physical. We're going to get more mental with Dave Hoops when we come back. Northland Sports page, stick around.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
So many did that today. Congratulations on a great run to all Grandma's Marathon weekend participants, the half, the full. Those, of course, today, the 5K last night. Congratulations to everybody. What a grind. But again, what an honor just for yourself when you finish. It's a great feeling. I've only done it walking the 5K a handful of times, but that euphoria when you finish is something I don't know that I have the words for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's so many people that haven't and won't put me in that. But if you don't respect the time and energy and effort and training that goes into all of this, you're missing the point. Like, this is not something you can just say, hey, you know what? This week I'm going to run Grandma's, right? You just can't do that and be super successful at it. I mean, you can do it, right? But it's going to be more difficult and these folks that finished in the top 15, like, goodness gracious. And there we see them here at the end of the race in front of Town Square Media, and they're flying. Like, they're not struggling to keep moving. Like, they're running like a sprinter at this point. Like, it's amazing.
It is quite a sight to behold, and we talk about how rewarding the feeling of finishing is, but also down at the finish line down at Canal Park, you don't have to venture very far to get a literal reward, and that's a beer from Hoops Brewing.
Yeah, you should literally fly over to Hoops Brewing after it's done.
We're going to do that right now in the radio sense. We're going to fly on over to hear from Dave Hoops. Dave Hoops, good morning. It's a big day for Duluth, which means a big day for you because there's a whole lot happening right around your beautiful establishment. Good to hear from you again today.
Oh, it's great. Great to be here. It's great that the race is flying and it went off, no problems. And yeah, Canal Park is hopping. It's a lot of happy people down there.
Yeah, it's interesting because we always say in Duluth, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. Or the other thing that we say is, the forecast 5 days out, by the time that 5 days is over, may not be right. Now, it looks like it may be wet later today, but there was talk of the race getting washed out, not even close. I think as a runner, this was probably pretty ideal today.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody got going, and it was actually a lot nicer than people thought. And you're right; it's probably ideal conditions in spite of the kind of the lead up to it. It's all good.
Now we're coming up on the 11 o'clock hour. We're about 4 minutes away from that, but your brewery has been doing a lot already today. There's been a lot of race-related things that people can check out and obviously consume as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, we open early and we televise everything, and it's great that it's on a normal TV today. So we've had that all going, and we're helping people carb load. You show your jersey, you get your bib, you get a beer shot, and we've got carbs. We've got hot dogs, we've got pretzels, we've got all kinds of stuff, and the place is full of runners kind of recovering with a little bit of carbohydrate loading.
Nothing wrong with that. And, of course, anybody who's local or anybody that wants to come back next weekend, your establishment will be a great spot again because Hoopla number 7, or if you love the Roman numerals, Hoopla VII in full effect
3
a
to
week
10.
from today.
Yeah, it's going to be really great. We rarely have music, and this time we have 2 great bands starting about 4:45. We've got a whole day of giveaways, games, fun, special beers, and yeah, we're grateful. And that's pretty much the entire word for the entire weekend. Year 7, I've been down there for 9 years now, watching it grow and come around, and it's a really good feeling when people are celebrating. There's no doubt.
Brian, who's kicking that off?
That's us.
Oh, yes, that's right. We'll be down there, too.
I was going to say, Hoopla 7 next Saturday actually starts at 10 with the Northland Sports Page from 10 to noon, and then Monster Weekend Kickoff will be noon to 1 as part of Hoopla. Programming note, since we're touching on that, the Harbor Monsters do play tomorrow, and Monster Weekend Kickoff will be on these airwaves at noon tomorrow until 1, and then, of course, you can catch the game at 5 o'clock. It'll be the Harbor Monsters and the Goats of Kansas City. Again, that's tomorrow night at the deck. They're finally back home, but if you can't get to the game, one more reason to go to Hoops. Dave Hoops, I'm filling you with a bunch. Great watch parties for the Harbor Monsters.
Watch party and a meet and greet after the game. Players will be on site. Everybody can celebrate the win, do it properly, and kind of roll out the really great weekend. And let's go Monsters.
Absolutely. Players will be on site after the game, as you mentioned. I'll just tell you right now, the public address announcer will be on site after the game tomorrow as well. The after parties at your place are a lot of fun. I've spent a lot of time down there this summer already, and we're just getting rolling. But I want to get right to that. If there are some marathon folks in town that are tuning in right now and maybe aren't from here and they're just hearing about Hoops Brewing for the first time, tell them what's going on specifically this weekend.
Well, like I just mentioned, we've got a brand new partner next to us, the Bridge Cocktail Lounge, and they have a fine menu, and they're doing a heck of a job there. And all day long, we're going to be just we've got some pop-ups going on. We've got post-race stuff with Duluth Running Company, and we've just got kind of a festive atmosphere. We're not going to have the outside open, obviously, but in general, and we've got all these beers, this huge lineup of beers that are just really, like you said earlier, Dave. We're not a bar; we're a community center to enjoy, and then we'll go into Twins game and the U.S. Olympic trials. The track and field is my favorite sport, and that'll be on all day. And just a general overall celebration. That's the word of the weekend for me.
So when it comes to reasons to get on down to Hoops Brewing, there is no limit. There is no question that you should take advantage of the opportunity. But speaking of no question, I'm not going to have any more because Dave Cook has all the good ones, more life-altering material for us today.
All right, so I got to ask, Dave, do you want the sports-related first or the non-sports-related first?
Let's go sports today.
All right.
Please.
So I heard a great question this week, and I wanted to push it towards you guys. And I'm going to ask Lavelle this one a little bit later, too. Willie Mays passed this last week. Probably one of the greatest, certainly the greatest living. Now he's passed away. Who's the greatest living baseball player? Let me give you some choices. All right, and that's a big question. Here were the choices I was given. Sandy Koufax, Ricky Henderson, Junior Griffey, Albert Pujols, or is it other? Because Maddox fit in the other section.
Wait a minute. So I need clarification on the question. Is Mays better than all of those, or is it the best living player now?
It's the best living player now.
Okay. I apologize. I checked out for a moment because I panicked thinking I was going to have to change buy or sell because my buy or sell for baseball involves say hey as well.
No.
Dave Hoops, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to say Barry Bonds, but that wasn't on the list, even though...
So you picked other.
I guess I picked others, but I would... Griffey would be my guy off of that list, hands down.
I think Dave is right because I was pondering this too because a lot of talk of Willie Mays this week for obvious reason. And there was a lot of, he's the godfather of center fielders. Whether you think he's the greatest player to ever play the game or not, he's probably the godfather of center fielders. And then there's so much talk in baseball in general of its era, it's generational, you can't compare. So I thought, well, for people my age or even yours and Dave Hoops, who's the best ever? And I thought Griffey would lead that conversation. I really did. But on that list, I have a hard time not giving it to Ricky.
Yep.
And I don't want to because Ricky for me is like Michael Jordan. While he was playing, I didn't care for him. I thought Ricky was a hot dog. I didn't like the teams that he played for. I wasn't the Jordan guy. I cheered for Stockton and Malone in that finals. I cheered for Sean Kemp in that finals. Judge me accordingly. I thought MJ was one of those guys that that shot too much and it's a team game, yada, yada, yada. Well, I grew out of that. And then with all the LeBron lovers, I kind of roll my eyes and go, yeah, you never saw Jordan. Well, now I kind of do that with Ricky. People talk about Mike Trout. People talk about different players today. And I go, wait a minute. The original 5-tool might have been Ricky Henderson, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting because depending on who you put on the list, and this is one of the things I had mentioned. If you forget Albert Pujols, right? Yeah. Because his numbers are ridiculous.
Well, because the end was so bad.
If he'd have stayed in St. Louis and not had those years in California, I think he'd be much higher up this list. I agree. I think it's Ricky. It should be Junior. Sandy Koufax is really tough to argue, but the problem with his career was
you sneezed and it was over.
Yeah. Now, 4 or 5 years, he was the best pitcher that anybody had ever seen, but he didn't last long enough. All right, so let's go non-sports here because this is an important question at our house. All right, toilet paper.
He's on a roll, Dave.
When you're putting the roll on the thing, is it mullet, mohawk, or who cares as long as it works?
Never really seen the mohawk.
Well, that's coming forward.
Because wouldn't it be sticking up?
Yes, that's coming forward is a mohawk, going backwards is the mullet, and then who cares as long as it works is the way I do it.
So mine's always forward. I'll just go with that. I'm not going to say much about this.
So he's a mohawk.
As long as I have some available, I'm in a better mood.
So
how about that?
Brian's mohawking it.
Are you there?
Yep.
No, yeah, go ahead,
up.
Dave. Oops, you're up.
Oh, I'm sorry. It dropped off for a second. No, I'm going to go with who cares. I hadn't heard any of those terms for TP before, so
I had heard the mullet. I was not familiar with the mohawk because when I think of a mohawk, I thought, well, who's got little spikes sticking out of their toilet paper roll? Then you've got a whole different problem.
That would make
That's
a whole
lot
thing.
Less than 2-ply.
See, apparently at our house, it's a mullet.
Here's what I want to know, because I've often said on this show, and Dave Hoops, I bet you've heard me say this, that a lot of the topics of discussion that I'll come up with come to me when I'm walking a couple miles in the middle of the afternoon. I've had some things, dawn on me in the shower, whatever the case may be. I can only guess what Dave Cook was doing when he's like, I'm going to ask these guys how they handle their toilet paper.
The conversation was.
Have you had a crappy morning, Dave?
Ooh, very nice. No, but the conversation was an interesting one. All right, so I have one other. I know, Brian, we had talked about.
And I have a bonus as well.
So how much time do we have?
About 90 seconds, but we can stretch it a bit.
You go.
All right, so my bonus question is affiliated with Grandma's a little bit. Now, both of you Daves are music aficionados more so than me. And you've discussed live musical acts that you've seen and enjoyed and ones that you've liked to have seen. And all three of us are in love with sports. That's the reason why we're doing this sports show every Saturday. Grandma's Marathon for me is the perfect weekend because it combines the two. It's a sport that you can enjoy and been enjoying since the wee hours this morning. But tonight is all about musical entertainment and concerts. What do you prefer? Tickets to a sporting event or tickets to a concert?
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, that's a great question, and really it's going to be sporting for me because I still attend a lot of sporting events live, and I don't attend a lot of concerts live anymore. I often say I've seen every band that I ever wanted to see except Bob Marley, which I just was too young. So I've been really fortunate. I still love live music, but I'm always going to go to sports. I'm going to go watch Twins games, for the rest of my life, and I might not go to as many concerts, little different vibe there. So sports.
It's interesting, Brian, because my affinity for crowds. The answer for if it's concert, it's as Dave said. I mean, if you said,
but what's the answer?
Right. So, but what I'm saying is, if it was concert, it's dependent on the band. So I'm going to agree with Dave and say sporting event because I'd go to Chicago and watch the White Sox play the Astros, but I'm not going to spend significant money to see Iron Maiden. Do you know what I mean? And
right.
So I guess if you were asking me, an average Vikings game to an AC/DC concert, I'm going to the concert.
That's different. Yeah, no, I get it. There are some specifics that I didn't put in there that you probably need to, but I tossed and turned with this question more than I thought I would. I'm going to say sporting events because anybody who's known me for 5 minutes is going to say you love going to games, and I've seen you at maybe 5 concerts in your life, and that would be right. It fits with my personality, but I'll tell you why I wrestled with this a little bit more. You're going to shell out good money for either one. I don't know very many times where I've said that concert was really bad, but I do know times where my favorite team has either lost in a heartbreaker or lost terribly, and well, that sucked, and what a waste of money that was. The other side of the coin is I know what I'm doing at a sporting event. I know what I'm cheering for. I know what I'm upset about. I know that I'm going to get food at certain times. I know what I'm doing. At a concert, guys, I look like an idiot because I can't dance for obvious reasons. I can't really sing anymore. I used to be able to, but broadcasting has kind of wrecked that idea on my voice. Not that I have to explain that to you, Dave Cook, but I can't really sing. And concert goers, they came to see the people do the singing, not you. So you're not going to do that. You can't socialize. I love being with people and talking. You're not going to go to a concert and try to yell in their ear and have a good conversation. So I'm reminded of like when we went to Dropkick Murphys not too long ago. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Did I have any clue what I was doing? No. So I'm going to go sporting events for the lack of anxiety, but at the same time, the result gives me anxiety where there's no concert result usually. So it's just different. But again, I want to give a shout out to a concert I went to last night.
Please.
Dave Cook, I was telling you about this in the car. Dave Hoops, I don't know if you're familiar with the band The Fishheads at all, but they're more of a bluegrassy style band doing covers of songs that you're very familiar with. So I want to give you an example. I heard Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC last night done in a polka style. I heard Walk This Way by Aerosmith done in a bluegrass style. I heard Superstition by Stevie Wonder done in bluegrass. I heard 8 Days a Week by the Beatles with the main instrument being a banjo. Music knows no bounds. I thought of you guys because I know how much you appreciate it.
Yeah, no, Brian, I agree. And especially when you have a local talent that is flexing. You can see a future for them, right? Because you really enjoy not just their music, but their creativity, their energy, all of that.
Absolutely, and all the finishers enjoy some good music tonight. Here's a little I'm Not Running Anymore by John Cougar Mellencamp. I'm not running my mouth anymore, and Dave Hoops, you're done as well. Another great Saturday, and let's do this again in a week. We'll be at your spot for some hoopla. Should be fun.
Should be fun. And Monday night, Game 7. I mean, a must-see. Everybody should enjoy that.
Agreed.
Edmonton, Florida should be a good one. Never thought we'd see a Game 7 the way it started, but here we are. Thank you, Dave Hoops, for, again, rolling with the creative start time today. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a really good Grandma Saturday afternoon.
Thanks, Dave.
Sure.
You too.
And evening.
You
All right,
as well.
bye.
Encourage everybody to get on down to Hoops Brewing. Encourage everybody to stay with us as the show continues. Again, we go until almost 12:30 today. Lavelle E. Neal III, Star Tribune columnist. He's next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
And I ran so far away. A good marathon theme song on Grandma's
that's a great
Marathon
one.
Saturday. 26.2. Congratulations to all the finishers. 13.1 to all the finishers of the half. And 3.1 for all the 5K finishers on Friday night. All of them tremendous accomplishments.
Oh my gosh. The just like we said, the training and the energy and the effort and the passion that goes into marathon running. Hoy. Now let's talk to somebody who's got that kind of passion and energy and all the things when we're talking Minnesota sports, Brian. Let's check in with Lavelle.
I was going to say he's far away, but thankfully only a phone call away. Lavelle E. Neal III, good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm certainly not running anywhere either.
No, I'm not either. Hobbling quickly at best these days.
What
but
did we used to say, Brian? The reason God invented cars was 26.1 miles.
something to that effect. But for me, it's a little bit more like I always say, you know what? My parents never took me camping as a kid. You know why? Because they love me. I have the same theory when it comes to running, but I digress. And the folks in Duluth, they show out in a big way for this particular weekend. So again, congrats to those who did 26.2, 13.1, or 3.1. All of them very, very accomplished. Speaking of accomplished, Lavelle E. Neal, you are a very accomplished writer. Let's talk about the book right away because I'm seeing it more and more places, a lot of times on your social media, but I'm seeing the interest level increase as well. You got to be pretty happy with this.
Yeah, it's going well so far. It's been a very interesting experience. I realize now that I've got to keep more books in the back of my car because I'm running into people on the street wanting, hey, can I get your book? And I'm like, man, I wish I had one. I'd sell you one right now. So I just put in an order for somewhere. I think I'm going to spend the summer just having boxes of books in the back of my car and just being available for anyone who wants one. But yeah, and I've got like 5 book signings scheduled, 3 at Barnes and Nobles in the Twin Cities area and a couple private events as well. So I'm looking to expand that and and spend the summer kind of just, spreading the word about the history of the Twins through one man's point of view. So.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of spreading the word, of course, I made reference to it just as the book because we've talked about it before, and I'm very interested in it, and it's a topic that's near and dear to both of us. But there are some folks that might just be tuning in and might say, okay, Lavelle wrote a book. What is it exactly? I guess spell it out for everybody.
Oh, it is called The Franchise, A Curated History of the Minnesota Twins. It goes back to basically 1952, 1953, when people in the area started talking about we want a Major League Baseball team. And ironically, I just wrote a column a few days ago talking to Tony Leave about Willie Mays, and it's in the first chapter actually. Mm-hmm. Mays spent 1 month basically, or 35 games, playing for the Minneapolis Millers, which was the farm team of the New York Giants at the time, and he had a ridiculous month. He hit like 477 and slugged 799. And, Millers fans were thrilled to have this wonderful talent, this guy who could run all over the field, make all kinds of plays, throw people out, and help them win games. But after 35 games, Leo DeRoche was like, I got to have this guy. So they called him up, and Millers fans were so incensed over the fact that they lost Willie Mays that Horace Stoneham, the owner of the Giants, had to take out a page in the Sunday Evening Tribune to write a letter explaining why they had to take Willie, basically because he earned it. But he gave the fans credit for being passionate. But I think that was one of the reasons that there was a push for a Major League franchise, because they didn't want to miss out on having great talented players like Mace just come through for a pit stop and go on. They wanted their own Major League teams where the players, it's more of a destination for players who may stay there for several years. So it goes all the way back to then. And I had freedom to write different chapters, so I did a chapter in each of the three stadiums, the Met Stadium, the Dome, and Target Field. I did a chapter on each of the St. Paul guys, Molitor, Joe Mauer, Jack Morris, Dave Winfield, all those guys. Did a chapter in 87, of course, in 91. Did a chapter on the contraction year, because I thought that was a very interesting moment in Twins history. So a lot of things are covered in a series of essays here. So I hope it's a good read. I have had no complaints from people. I know one of my buddies is already halfway through it, and he's got no complaints. So that work, spending all summer at the Minnesota Historical Society, it looks like it's been worth it. I played golf once all last year while I was getting this book done, and I already played 3 times this year, so I'm trying to catch up.
So Brian, wouldn't you be interested in reading Sid Hartman's response to the full-page letter that Horace Stoneman put out? I'm sure there's something about, my friends and things like that. Sid was
close personal friends.
Sid was a little caustic. I wonder what that conversation was like.
That would be interesting. And Lavelle, I was also going to ask you, what about writing a book on this year alone? Would you simply call it Ride the Roller Coaster? Because would the real Minnesota Twins please stand up?
I don't know what's going on with this team. It's so doggone streaky. They started out 7-13, and then went 13-7, and had a ridiculous 20-game run. And then they stopped hitting and scuffled again. I mean, I was talking to Rocco a few weeks ago, and he was like, if it wasn't for our 13-7 run, we'd have like the bottom 5 offense in baseball. And all of a sudden they started hitting again. Royce Lewis has been amazing. Correa has finally hit like a guy who's making $33 million a year. Buxton had a brief stint, but he's kind of calling back again. And I don't know what's going on with that knee. It's stopping him from using his lower half when he swings, and you can see by the lack of power. So there's some interesting things going on. But doggone. And then they have a nice homestand, but then they lose 2 to the Rays, and now they lost yesterday to Oakland A's team. They battered here last week. So I don't know what kind of type of read to get on this team. It's and the other thing too is that they're 0-6 against the Yankees, 0-5 against Cleveland, which is concerning, 0-3 against Baltimore. And they got to prove that they can slug it out with some of the big boys here if they want to be taken seriously. And I don't see it. It seems like there's always something lacking with this team, whether it's not the right offense or the wrong relief outing or something that goes weird, or a key error, because Royce Lewis actually lost a game with an error last week. So it's just not clicking. It's not clicking. It's not sustaining. And they got time to get themselves calibrated, but you'd like to see some consistency sooner than later.
Absolutely, you would, because you mentioned the nice homestand, and it was 7-3, and I said 7-3 never felt so empty because the 2 losses to end it to Tampa certainly felt like an opportunity to go 9-1 instead. And then, unfortunately, last night was more lather, rinse, repeat with losing a 1-run game late. You look at this team going into the season, and you knew pitching wasn't going to be the strength it was a year ago. But when you look at the arms on both sides, you say, okay, well, you got number 1 starter in Pablo, you got bullpen lights out in Durant. Most Twins fans should be really concerned about both right now, shouldn't they?
Definitely with Pablo Lopez, because he works so hard. He's such a smart, learned individual. He understands pitching. And you think if there's anyone to figure out what's going on with him, it would be him. His sweeper is not as sharp as it was a year ago, and the numbers bear that out. My problem is I just see too many pitches over the middle of the plate, too many hittable pitches. He's got to do something to correct that, and he's got to give himself a chance to compete. I've always been a big I know offense is down, so saying that pitchers need to do more to stop hitters is kind of weird, but I still think if guys are struggling, and if guys like Lopez, whose best pitch is his changeup, he has a plus changeup, one of the best in the game. I would bust guys inside more and try to open up the outer half of the plate, so you don't have to be perfect with that 2-strike pitch and finish off hitters. I've always been a proponent of pitching guys inside, because they all dig in now. They're hitting balls, to the opposite field, 450 feet. They're too damn comfortable. I would move people's feet. I'd get them thinking about, he may be coming in my kitchen here, and then try to work something away where it doesn't have to be perfect, and maybe just try to build some momentum that way. So I've seen it happen in firsthand. I remember when Rick Anderson became the pitching coach, and Brad Radke was kind of scuffling a little bit with his career, and Anderson talked Radke into pitching inside more, and he did that and was able to take advantage of what he could do down and away, and he ended up finishing up his career, rather positively. So I just think with Lopez, that's something he's got to address sooner than later. You got to think he's going to figure something out. It just doesn't. His makeup suggests that he's going to find a solution here, but it just doesn't look bad. It just doesn't look good. I mean, and although Luis Ariz people are starting to be heard chirping now because they think the Twins should never have traded Ariz. I would have made the trade 11 times out of 10. To get a guy as quality as Pablo. And Duran, I don't know what's going on with Duran. It looks like everything other than his fastball isn't clicking. He threw a splitter yesterday that didn't split and got pounded. He hit a batter with a curveball. So it seems like right now he's lost the feel for his off-speed pitches, and he's got to work on those. But, when in trouble, throw 102 miles an hour, see what happens. Get back to the basics and then work off that fastball, because he's got a beautiful fastball, one of the best in the game. And, don't try to trick people, challenge them. It's the bleeping Oakland A's, for goodness sakes. How many guys can actually get around on a 103 mile an hour fastball? Let's go.
That certainly makes me feel better when an established baseball mind like Lavelle is saying a lot of the things that I've thought while watching this team. Lavelle E, Neal III, columnist for the Star Tribune, and quite frankly, my favorite Twins mind is with us. Dave Cook, go ahead.
Well, I'm actually going to take him outside of the Twins.
He is a columnist after all.
Absolutely. And so, Lavelle, we have one of our sponsors, Dave Hoops, on every day, and we talked a question that I had responded to earlier this week, and it's, now that Willie Mays has passed, who is the greatest living ball player? Is it Koufax? Is it Griffey Jr.? Is it Ricky Henderson? Is it Albert Pujols? Or is it other? Is it the field?
I would lean toward Koufax, just because I think it's remarkable. He's already been a Hall of Famer for over 50 years. That just blows my mind. And the dominance that he had during his career, and in the way he did it, and it's unfortunate, because he pretty much pitched in pain his last couple of years and still was able to be effective before he having to retire prematurely. But my goodness, he was one of the most fantastic pitchers ever. So I have to give it to Sandy. I mean, that's a good group. Let's see. I would have Pujols in front of Ricky. I'd have Griffey Jr. in front of Pujols. I don't know. Pujols in front of Ken Griffey Jr. Jr. was an outfielder though, so he could make great plays defensively. That gives him more value. Who else did you mention?
The other one was Ricky, and then other. I mean, Maddox isn't on the list and all that, but if there's somebody that wasn't mentioned, I find it interesting, Brian, that Ricky's down the list a little bit.
I was going to say, you and I are Ricky Bobos.
Yeah.
I think that's what we figured out. Because when we gave our answers, Ricky was very high, and Griffey Jr. was usually right above or right below.
Well, I think Ricky, could definitely be in the conversation. But I just think about the God-given ability that Ken Griffey Jr. had. And to be honest with you, Griffey could have had even more of a productive career. He was so doggone good, so doggone gifted with his hand-eye coordination that you could watch the Mariners play and look into the dugout, and Griffey's not even paying attention to what's going on the field. He's not trying to get reads on the pitcher. He's not trying to, size up the defensive players to see if he can exploit one of them. He was like laughing, telling stories, and not even looking out in the field. But when he got to the plate, it didn't matter. He was still just doing so much damage. It makes you wonder if he really bared down and tried to nail down the finer points of the game, just how much more better he would have been. But what we got was still pretty doggone special.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of players, Dave, we talk about, well, their numbers are good. Think about if they hadn't gotten hurt. Griffey Jr.'s numbers are among the very best ever to play, and he was hurt quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I had two guys that I wanted to ask special for Lavelle to see where they might fit. And one is Bonds. Can you put him in there with the PEDs, or do you just have to always say, well, Barry was juiced? And then Ichiro. Where does Ichiro fit in this list of best living ball players?
Well, Ichiro definitely is probably one of the best hitters ever.
I've ever seen.
The Seattle newspaper had the greatest lead ever. It said, Babe Ruth was the Sultan of Swat. Ichiro Suzuki is the Sultan of Slap. And that's what he did for most of his career. And the funny part is he could have hit homers if he wanted to. He would hit bombs like in batting practice, but when it came to game time, he was just trying to get the ball in between the defense and steal bases and wreak havoc and throw people out from right field. So, he's definitely in the top 10. I would put Bonds there too. There's an asterisk next to Bonds because of the PED accusations, because he never really failed a test. I'm trying to figure out who else to throw in there. I wouldn't throw Cabrera in there. I wouldn't throw Trout's disappointing me. He was on that path too, but he's kind of had some injury plagued years now.
Isn't it some pitchers? Isn't it Rivera, Steve Carlton, guys like that might be on the list? I kind of dropped pitchers off.
Nolan Ryan hasn't died as far as I know.
He's not going to be on the list.
He should be somewhere. I know you don't like the number of walks he had, but he should be somewhere.
I think Ryan should be in that list. I think Ryan should be on that list.
Thank you.
Clemens, no. Rivera, yes. He threw the most unhittable pitch in the history of the game. A sinker that he could manipulate. He could go down sometimes. It could go sideways at times, and very few hitters squared it up. He probably should have won a Cy Young at one point during his career. In fact, he should have won the year that all us writers were idiots and voted Bartolo Colon the Cy Young Award just because he got the 20 wins. I think he was 20-10 with like a 3.9 ERA that year. Johan Santana's numbers were all, other than wins, were much better than Bartolo Colon's. He probably deserved it more than Bartolo. That would have given Johan 3 consecutive Cy Young awards, and every pitcher who has won 3 Cy Youngs is in the Hall of Fame. So that was a career-altering vote there. But then Mariano Rivera, I believe, finished second in the vote in that year. And if there was a year for him to win a Cy, it was probably that one.
Well, we can apologize for the Cologne bit, but you're not the first person to get enamored with Big Sexy and just have it happen. So we can brush that one aside. I think what I've learned from this discussion is why weren't the Mariners better? Because we talked about Griffey Jr., Ichiro. We know Edgar Martinez could hit blindfolded. The Mariners have had some good years, but never good enough. Very Minnesota-esque in some ways. But all right, Lavelle, so this history of the game made a lot of deep thought occur. I'm going to give you a question that hopefully doesn't require any. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not entirely. So Dave Cook mentioned Dave Hoops and Hoops Brewing not too long ago, and how often we have Dave Hoops on the show. FYI, Hoops Brewing is where I hope we can do a book signing for you in Duluth in August. But Hoops Brewing makes tremendous beer. And also last week was a Father's Day Eve show, so we were talking about Father's Day memories, whether they're sports-related or not, or overall memories with Dad. Now, you had one on your Facebook this week that talked about you ended up wearing some beer as well. Can you expand on that for us?
Oh, that was a Father's Day.
Yeah.
It was Father's Day, and I came up with this idea, and I was like 21, 22, and my grandfather lived in southwestern Michigan, and of course, I was with Dad, my father, in south side Chicago. So I called Granddad. I said, "Hey, if you can get on the train and get here," because my grandfather was he was a chef for 50 years on Amtrak, so he could ride free on Amtrak forever. And so if you can get on Amtrak and get here, I will buy you and Dad tickets, and we'll go to the Cubs game on Father's Day. And he did. So it was great. Went to Wrigley Field, and we had good seats down the right field line behind the visitors' dugout. And it was a great day. But I'm trying to remember, it was Goose. I want to say it was Goose Gossage was trying to prove he could still get hitters out. I think he gave the game went in extra innings. I think he gave a grand slam, and the Cubs ended up losing in extras. And then being the White Sox fan that I was, I stood up and started cheering when the ball went into the seats. And there was a guy behind me. There's a guy who behind me just tossed his beer at me and just doused me. It was pretty funny. I had no problems wearing that because I was happy that the Cubs had gotten taken down.
It was a badge of honor. Dave Cook, go ahead.
All right, now I want to talk to the columnist. So the Twins ownership or the Timberwolves ownership thing seems to be getting more and more messy. Lavelle, what's your take?
My take is kind of weird because now they've added Bloomberg to the A-Rod and Laurie group. So now you got three outside people, who are trying to get their hands in the Wolves. So it always makes you concerned about the long-term future of the franchise in this town. You talk to people, you get different views. A lot of people think that Laurie and A-Rod have a valid argument as to how they went about preparing a bid to buy the team and raising the money to pay the final installment on the team. Oh, by the way, I think we've learned through this period that you should never allow franchises to be bought on the layaway plan. Let's stop that now going forward.
I like that.
But some people think that Glenn's got a case too. So it's weird. I think before I would say I would root for whichever side is willing to pay the luxury tax to keep the team together. It seemed that Glenn was more willing to do that than A-Rod and Laurie, because when they made their business plan known to the league, it mentioned cutting payroll because of luxury tax threshold. But now they brought in one of the richest people in the world in Bloomberg. So there's no reason for them not to be able to pay that luxury tax now. So I don't know what to think. And I wrote about this the day that they announced the partnership, that they're going to ask for new arena. And Mark Laurie talked glowingly at his introductory news conference about having a state-of-the-art digitally enhanced stadium, which would allow great interaction between the fans and the game and the stadium, and just building the excellent experience. This is a man who wants to build his own city, So I can only imagine what he wants in the stadium. And A-Rod and Laurie have been looking around the Twin Cities at possible sites for a stadium. They've looked at the Farmers Market, which is kind of northeast of Target Field, just northeast of Target Field. They looked at possibly playing a couple years at Excel in St. Paul while building on the current site and maybe expanding across the street into Butler Square. And, of course, long shot is always – Bloomington was always like a long shot because Bloomington always throws their hat in the ring because they're still butthurt over losing the Met Center and the Metropolitan Stadium, So
eloquently said, but so accurate. Go ahead.
They've been hunting around for locations, man. And once they get control, this is going to become a bigger thing about building a stadium for these guys. Now, Target Center is the second oldest facility in the NBA, trailing only Madison Square Garden, which I was surprised to discover or read about that. So they tried to renovate it a few years ago. I wasn't a big fan of it. It's a functional arena. Glenn Taylor was willing to ride with it for the stadium for a few more years before even bringing up a new stadium. But I think these other guys are going to force the issue on that. And, of course, if they don't like what they hear in response, they can always possibly, say, okay, hello Seattle or hello Las Vegas, and we're going through stadium wars again. With those guys using leverage to try to get what they want, and people here complaining about how stadiums are going to be funded with taxpayer money, and that whole rigmarole. This seems to be a hallmark of Minnesota sports going back to the 1960s or 1950s when they started dreaming about building a metropolitan stadium. I guess that's what this town's all about, just having stadium battles every few years.
It certainly does seem a little bit too common. I'll tell you what, I never get tired of being common, though, and that's the opportunity to talk to you. This was awesome. It always is.
Yep.
I'm going to close with this. Early predictions on the Chicago Bears record. I heard you hyping them on the mothership earlier this week. What's your initial thought?
Well, here's the thing. They're going to be better. Even with a rookie quarterback.
That's a low bar. Go ahead.
He's got, they were 7-9 last year, and they blew a fourth-quarter lead at home against Denver, and they blew a fourth-quarter lead at Detroit. So they could have been 10-7, and with 7-10. They would have been 9-8 and possibly in a conversation for a postseason spot. So the defense continues to get better. They were a top 10 defense after Montez Sweat was traded for. They got great offensive weapons and with Keenan Allen and Roma Duzzi. And we have the greatest punter ever in Torrey Taylor, who is going to pin opponents at the 5-yard line all year long, making it easy for the defense to shut down opponents. So
of course, Caleb said he's not needed.
I said, so I'm seeing 10 or 11 wins for the Chicago Bears and being relevant in the NFC North again.
I'll tell you this. I agree with you on part of that. Your punter will be great, and we'll see him a lot. I'll tell you this. We're bumping you out with Running with the Devil. If the Bears make the playoffs, somebody made a deal with the devil, Lavelle, but we love you. Let's do this again soon.
All right. No problem.
Thank you, Lavelle.
Absolutely. That's Lavelle E. Neal III. I absolutely love that. He's our Twins go-to, but he can be our go-to on just about anything.
That's the best. That's the best thing about talking with Lavelle. You don't get pigeonholed into an area. Now he's past our depth in baseball, but the rest of it is fantastic too.
But on a day where running is the theme, we started running short on time. We got to go to a break because we can go to Lavelle about anything. Northland Sports Page continues. Haven't said the name of the show in a while. Brian Prudhomme, I'm Dave Cook. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.